Taking the tour, an introduction to the user interface. So here in Creative Cloud, if I am going to start a new project, for example, this new project window will come open, and I can point to where I want that location to live by opening up that browser window and select what folder the project should live in. And once I've pointed to that folder, then I give the project a name. In this case, I'm going to call this Ron Tutorial. The default settings for this are usually totally fine. And the project already exists. That's fine because I'm using it as an example. So here we are in the default interface. And what I want to do is I want to bring in clips so that I can start editing. So there's a few ways to do that. The first one is to select File and go to Import. That will open up a window in which it will look in folders, and you can specify which folder you'd like to go to in order to import your clip. In this case, I want to import this one. You can import multiple clips if you wish. So now, having imported that clip, I have that clip in here now. Now, as of right now, there's no sequences, so there's nothing here for me to like drag into. I need to create a sequence. And the easiest way, and one of the best ways to ensure that the sequence you create is going to be, is going to work well with your clip, is to actually right mouse click your clip here and to select New Sequence from Clip. By doing that, it gives you your sequence window, and it also drops the clip into that sequence. And it also, as you can see here, the sequence settings match the video settings of the movie. So you know that there won't be any discrepancy there. Once the clip is in here, the timeline here is where you will actually be working with the video clip. This allows you to scrub through. By going here, this allows you to increase and decrease how much of your timeline you're able to see. So for example, by going out here, I can see the entire clip. If I wanted to zoom in on a particular portion, I can do that by bringing that space in. And it will always zoom in centered around where that cursor exists. So for example, right now, it's kind of over here in the middle. If I were to move it over here and then zoom in, it would still always zoom in around the center of that cursor. So I've got my clip in. If I had more than one clip and I wanted them to play on top of each other, then I could also import by right mouse clicking inside this window and selecting Import from the little pop-up menu. And then just it opens up the cursor again, and I'm able to click on the other one. And that will import that file as well. Now I have both files in here, and I can add the second one by just bringing it here into the clip. I can either add it directly after this one so that they both live on the video 1 or audio 1 channels, or I can move it so that it actually lives on one of the other video and audio channels. And the reason I would want to do that would be if I intended to, say, crossfade from one to the other, or do any kind of fading or any kind of effect at all between two clips, then they would need to overlap. And so you would want it to be on a separate channel so that you could affect two clips at the same time. But if they're going to play one right after the other with no kind of transition, then they can be on the same one or on the opposite one. And you would just have them butt up against each other like this. So that way, when this plays like that, it will just immediately play into the next clip like that. So that is importing directly and getting your timeline started. Now let's look at how to do that in Adobe CS6. In CS6, the layout is extremely similar. You still use this to go in and out. Your sequence, if you create a new project, it will first just ask you what your settings are, and then down here is where you select the folder that it will appear in and give the project a name. Run Tutorial CS6. Give it a name so that it's somewhat different, just so that it doesn't cause problems. Now in CS6, it automatically defaults to a window that asks you to choose what kind of sequence you would like to do. The sequence basically is the settings for what size the video and the frame rate and the kilohertz, etc. are. And there are many options. A lot of them are specific to certain kinds of cameras, whether or not it's high definition or not. The most common is DV-NTSC, which is standard video, which is 720 by 480, as you can see right there. Widescreen is also 720 by 480, but the aspect ratio is slightly different, which means that it still has the same number of pixels, high and low, but they're not square pixels, and that they have this aspect ratio instead. Also, if you go to, say, for example, HDV, this has many of the common high definition formats. And then the difference here is usually the frame rate. The frame rate is the number of frames per second. So for example, here, this actually is 1440 by 1080, but it has a frame rate of 24 frames a second. This is 25 frames a second, which is usually used for PAL, the European video format. And this is 30 frames a second, which is standard for NTSC, the North American format. So the easiest way to know which one to select is to, in this case, choose any of them. But then, when you're ready to import your clip, so if I import my clip again, it doesn't have to matter which sequence you select first, because what you can do is you can actually just delete this sequence by highlighting it and selecting clear, and then select the clip you imported, and then go to new sequence from clip, and that will create a clip based on what the settings for that video are as well. And that way you know that the sequence and the video are both in the same format and there won't be any conflicts. And I'm able to scrub and hear it. I currently am not recording audio because I didn't want to have you hear me scrubbing the audio back and forth, because it can be very loud, as you can see over here. It can be rather loud. So I'm not currently recording system audio for the sake of this tutorial, but I will have it turned on later so that you'll be able to get a sense. But as you're scrubbing through, you're able to hear the audio scrubbing as well. Besides just the clips, there are also other items that we can add to our project. If we go here to the New Item tab, we can select, for example, Black Video. Black Video will default to the settings of what the current sequence is. And what you will do with that Black Video is, for example, if you were going to have the video go from a black screen, if you wanted to fade it in, for example, then you would want it to live on one of the video channels above this so that you could do a transition and fade into that. So that's a place to be able to get those assets. In the next section, we'll talk about how to create titles for your video.